At 99 years old, Mel Brooks has earned the rare privilege of speaking plainly, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. After a century of life, decades of laughter, and a career that reshaped American comedy, Brooks doesn't traffic in scandal or vendettas. What he offers instead are reflections on creative compatibility, the kind that only emerge after years of collaboration, misfires, and quiet lessons learned behind closed doors. In Hollywood, conflict is often exaggerated into feuds, but Brooks' recollections tell a subtler story. His philosophy was never about liking or disliking people. It was about protecting rhythm, tone, and the fragile ecosystem of ensemble comedy. Some artists, even brilliant ones, simply operated in a different gravitational field. These weren't enemies, they were mismatches. Brooks built worlds that required trust, timing, and generosity, where ego had to bend to structure. When that balance tipped, the comedy suffered. Looking back, Brooks speaks not with anger, but with a craftsman's honesty about what worked, what didn't, and why some doors were never meant to open. Jerry Lewis, When Genius Occupies Too Much Space. Mel Brooks always acknowledged Jerry Lewis as a towering figure in comedy, a man whose influence rippled through generations of performers. But admiration doesn't always translate into collaboration. Brooks believed Lewis's creative process was so all-consuming that it left little room for shared authorship. Lewis thrived as the singular engine of a project, rewriting scenes instinctively, reshaping moments mid-performance, and placing himself at the center of every comedic orbit. Brooks, by contrast, approached comedy like architecture, carefully balancing chaos within structure. When Lewis's name surfaced during early conversations around a project in the 1980s, Brooks declined without hesitation, not out of disrespect, but foresight. He understood that two dominant creative systems rarely coexist peacefully. Their brief meeting confirmed it. Lewis spoke passionately, expansively, and relentlessly, while Brooks listened and quietly concluded that their instincts were incompatible. There was no fallout, no public criticism, just mutual distance. Brooks later summed it up with gentle bluntness. Comedy requires space for others to breathe. Lewis's brilliance filled the room entirely, and Brooks knew his films needed oxygen. Gene Wilder, a partnership that changed everything, then changed shape. The creative bond between Mel Brooks and Gene Wilder remains one of comedy's most cherished alliances. Together, they forged films that blended anarchic humor with surprising emotional sincerity, redefining what parody could be. Wilder wasn't just an actor in Brooks's universe. He was a stabilizing force, someone who grounded absurdity with vulnerability. But even the strongest creative relationships evolve. After Young Frankenstein, Wilder felt drawn toward directing and brought Brooks a deeply personal project he hoped to shepherd together. Brooks declined, believing the timing wasn't right, a decision made from instinct rather than dismissal. Wilder heard something different. Where Brooks saw caution, Wilder felt distance. Their paths diverged quietly, without public bitterness or dramatic rupture. They remained respectful, even warm in passing, but the seamless creative loop they once shared never fully reformed. Brooks later reflected that losing that rhythm felt like losing a second voice in his head. Not a feud, not a falling out, just two artists growing in different directions. Sometimes the most painful endings arrive without argument, only silence. Chevy Chase, timing, tone, and the ensemble rule. Chevy Chase's comedic intelligence was never in question. His sharp timing, dry delivery, and effortless confidence made him a star, and studios repeatedly pushed him toward Mel Brooks projects throughout the 1980s. Yet Brooks consistently declined. The issue wasn't talent, but chemistry. Brooks believed comedy worked best when performers played off one another generously, passing energy rather than holding it. Chase, in Brooks's view, operated best as a lone satellite, always slightly detached, always aware of his own cleverness. That self-awareness, while effective on screen, disrupted the ensemble balance Brooks prized. He wanted actors who could disappear into the joke, not hover above it. When casting Spaceballs, Brooks chose Rick Moranis precisely because he knew when to advance and when to recede. Chase never lacked presence, but Brooks sensed he lacked surrender. Their brief meeting confirmed the disconnect. Polite, professional, but flat. Brooks never spoke ill of Chase publicly, instead offering vague reflections about performers who never quite enter the moment. For Brooks, comedy required belief, not irony, and that difference proved decisive. Harvey Korman, when improvisation meets precision. Harvey Korman was one of television comedy's great forces, performer whose instincts flourished in improvisational environments where spontaneity ruled. Mel Brooks admired that brilliance, but his own sets ran on meticulous timing, where every pause and inflection served a larger rhythm. Their collaboration on High Anxiety revealed that tension. Korman, eager to explore and expand, often improvised beyond the script, nudging scenes toward his natural style. Brooks, protective of the film's structure, resisted. What emerged wasn't hostility, but friction. Two masters, each accustomed to steering the room, found themselves pulling in slightly different directions. The set grew quieter, communication more formal, the joy harder to sustain. Still, professionalism prevailed. Korman delivered a flawless performance, and Brooks ensured the film never reflected the strain behind the scenes. Afterward, they spoke kindly of one another, but never reunited creatively. Frank Langella, when seriousness overpowers speed. Frank Langella arrived on Dracula, dead and loving it with elegance, gravitas, and theatrical authority. On stage, he had already redefined Dracula as a romantic, brooding figure, commanding attention through stillness and intensity. But Mel Brooks wasn't building a gothic tragedy. He was constructing a high-velocity comedy where seriousness existed only to be punctured. From early rehearsals, the mismatch was clear. Langella approached the role with reverence, delivering lines as though carved in stone, while Brooks needed elasticity, a willingness to let dignity collapse into slapstick. Brooks tried gentle adjustments, playful redirection, but Langella's instincts remained anchored in drama. The rhythm faltered. A pivotal moment came when Langella sincerely questioned whether the text should be mocked. Brooks realized then that they were speaking different comedic languages. Mel Brooks's comedy philosophy, structure first, ego last. Across all these stories, a single principle emerges. Mel Brooks viewed comedy as a collective act, not a platform for dominance. He believed laughter depended on trust, precision, and generosity, where performers served the joke rather than themselves. Chaos was welcome, but only when anchored to structure. Brooks didn't fear strong personalities. He feared disruption of rhythm. When collaboration turned into competition, the work suffered. That belief shaped his casting choices and his loyalty to certain collaborators who understood the balance. His sets were playful but disciplined, loud yet intentional. He encouraged silliness but never surrender of control. This wasn't rigidity, it was protection of tone. Brooks knew comedy was fragile, easily derailed by ego or misalignment. The actors who thrived with him were those who trusted the system, who could shine without eclipsing others. In that sense, Brooks wasn't rejecting people. Legacy without bitterness. What Brooks leaves behind. What's striking about Mel Brooks's reflections is the absence of resentment. There are no public feuds, no tell-all betrayals, no bitterness disguised as honesty. Instead, there's a craftsman's clarity about boundaries. Brooks never claimed moral superiority. only creative self-knowledge. He understood what his comedy required and respected himself enough to protect it. The actors he didn't collaborate with went on to immense success elsewhere, proving the issue was never talent, it was alignment. In an industry addicted to spectacle, Brooks practiced restraint. He said no when others said yes, walked away when pressure mounted, and trusted his instincts even when it cost him marquee names. That discipline preserved the integrity of his work. At 99, Brooks doesn't rewrite history, he contextualizes it. Final thoughts. Creative truths over Hollywood myths. In the end, Mel Brooks's story isn't about actors he couldn't work with. It's about the rare self-awareness to know what kind of artist you are and refuse to compromise it. Hollywood loves myths of rivalry and resentment, but Brooks offers something rarer: nuance. He understood that not every brilliant mind belongs in the same room, and that incompatibility isn't failure, it's information. His career stands as proof that boundaries are not barriers, but foundations. By choosing alignment over appeasement, Brooks built a body of work that remains timeless, fearless, and deeply human. At nearly a century old, he doesn't shout these truths. He simply lets them stand. And perhaps that's the most Mel Brooks thing of all.